In episode number 409 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the announcement of the new Pokémon Snap.
We also cover the 15-year anniversary of Batman Begins and our reflection on the movie.
And one of our comic book highlights this week is Batman Adventures Continue number 1.
All of this and so much more on today's show.
Hello and welcome to the award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and so much more. I am your Emperor Kelli.
And I am Pokemon Ranger Daniel.
What do you do as a Pokemon Ranger?
I hog all the Chanseys and the Kangaskhan for myself, and the Scyther as well. I don't know if that's the same as Safari Zone, but in my mind it fits.
Well, you know what else fits with Pokemon? Is our first piece of news.
Definitely does. For anyone new to the podcast, the way we format it is first we go through some news. We head into the Patreon shoutouts of the week, which are thank yous to all the brokettes that make today's show possible. We head into our comic book highlights, and we have 3 this week. And we finally end it with the Brokette block, which is the more personal side of the podcast and the update on what Palpa Kelli and I have been doing.
But more important than all that is our first piece of news.
In the early years of the podcast that we've been doing, you were asking for a sequel to Pokémon Snap. You were talking about how the new console could have been it. You were talking about how the previous console could have been it. You've been looking for this shit for so many years.
Forever, because it was such a solid game. And I get it was on the N64, and the N64 is not the easiest controller to work with, but it was so much fun, and it was a great fresh take on Pokemon, on the different things that you could do, on this amazing world that they had created. And yeah, when the Wii came out, when they had like that camera and that motion, I'm like, this is perfect. And then the Switch came out, and I'm like, this is even more perfect. And then Pokemon Go came out, and I'm like, they're setting the platform to just be able to go into the world and take pictures of, why don't they have this? And I had written it off. It was gone. It was never going to happen. I had my original, and I was happy. And it still brings me so much joy when I play it, but I knew there would never be another. Until today.
How big of a surprise was this for you this morning when I showed you that trailer?
I didn't even know what you were showing me, because you were just like, do you like Pokemon? And I was like, depending on the Pokemon. I thought you were going to show me somebody stupid. And then I was still working on, I was looking up something for you while you were playing it. And then I heard that snap, and I looked over, and there were real tears. I don't know if you noticed, but I legitimately teared up because I am so excited. And they gave us in that trailer that great shot of Pikachu eating an apple on the beach, which is like the very first thing that you see. Not really the first thing, but it's the first time you see Pikachu. It's very iconic in the original. And so they're just kind of saying, yeah, we're taking it back to its roots, right? We're remaking this game, and of course they have all the Pokemon in it now, and a bunch of Pokemon I don't give a shit about, but I'm going to photograph them all.
That's right. It will include Pokemon from all generations. Is that at all going to inhibit the experience for you at all? Does that 0%. Water down Pokemon Snap?
Sure doesn't.
I didn't see a single Bulbasaur, though, so I was a little disappointed because they're a big part of that first game.
Yeah, I'm sure Bulbasaur is going to be there somewhere. Has to be. The really cool thing about this, and what I hope they do, and kind of the age that we're in now, is they can release the game and then release more levels later that you have to pay for. And you better fucking believe I'm going to pay for all of them. Yeah, $5-10 for another level. Perfect. And they really have more opportunity, more ability than they did with the N64 to really expand this and make it ginormous. The N64 one, I can blow through that in about an hour, and that's photographing every single Pokemon in their craziest ways that you possibly can, and having a super high score. Not tooting my own horn, right? But now you really have the ability to make this a game that I'm going to have to play for like a few hours.
Did I ever tell you that they held a Pokemon Snap contest where you take the best picture that you can with the highest points and you submit it into Nintendo Power, I believe it was, or straight to Nintendo. And I submitted mine that had the highest points. I don't remember what Pokemon it was, but I got a letter back from Nintendo saying that I was one of 10 finalists
That's
for
amazing.
the grand prize or whatever. And you had to write an essay saying why you think yours should be the winner. And looking back, I still don't know how they figured out, because you would write down what the score is that Professor Oak gave you. And I never knew how they figured out that you were actually telling the truth. You would print out the sticker and you would submit it and all that, but I don't know if they had like an algorithm or something that they would like see the picture of and know that it's high scored, or if they just kind of took your word for it.
No, I think they probably knew, like the people who created the game, right? Who programmed how Professor Oak rated them, because I can look at two pictures side by side and tell you which one's going to have a better score.
Well, when they ended up announcing the winner, it was one that blew my score out of the water. And I'm like, how the fuck was I a finalist? And why did they make us all do this essay if they had a clear winner this whole time?
Because nobody got Nintendo Power. So you were one of 10 who submitted it.
Well, today we only have one blockbuster in the world. How are we gonna print out these pictures now? We need these stickers. We need that to be a part of the experience. And I want my little Pokemon cards, the little swipey ones that you got from Blockbuster.
I got a Pikachu one.
Those need to be a part of this in some way.
No, definitely not. Let me order my stickers. That'd be awesome. Cool, I'll order them and they can mail them to me. But I don't need to go and waste money on that card that you could only use once.
Well, can Nintendo waste money and open up Blockbusters just so we can do this? Just during the period of
just
the Windows?
Just so we can be extra nostalgic.
Or like a portable Blockbuster or something, do a tour of them.
So obviously, and I think we should talk more about this news than any other news, right? So obviously they have to make changes from the original. Besides a shit ton more Pokemon, what do you think another giant change will be?
There's going to be online play for sure, where there's going to be a ranking of best pictures based on score. I even noticed that while the game was playing, there's like a square on the center of the Pokemon that I'm assuming gets you extra points if you get on there. So I think it's going to be a little bit deeper than the one that we ended up growing with, just because it's on a system that's more advanced and you can do more things with the gameplay.
Do you think there's going to be an option to choose between using the joystick to move around and take pictures and using actually the handheld?
Yes. And if they were smart, they would. I think younger kids would like the movement of it itself, but I think people like you or I, we would want more control over the camera with a thumbstick. For
sure. I also noticed that there were a whole lot of pictures where it was two or multiple Pokemon together in the same frame. Interacting with each other, doing something. What were your thoughts on that? Did you have an opinion either way?
No, we had that in the previous game too.
Yeah, but not to that level.
What do you mean interacting, or how is it different?
So it was like 5 different Pokemon in one frame. And maybe that's just what they're showing us to get us excited. But there's like somebody jumping on this other guy and this guy's over here flying around. And I'm like, that's too many Pokemon. How do you know which one I'm trying to capture?
It's going to take a lot of reruns on the same level, just like in the original game, but I think even more. Because I do expect them to pack more Pokemon into this than in the previous one.
Reruns on multiple levels? I just went through once and beat the whole thing.
No, there were some you needed the special Pokeball, and then you have to go back to the level just to open up that certain... You needed the Pester Ball as a part of it.
That's true. Yeah, in the fire one. No, which one? In the cave you needed it, because then you blew them up, and that's how you got to the fire ones. Yeah, but you only had to run through them each twice to get all the Pokemon.
Right. Yeah, but if you want to get every single Pokemon... Sometimes you would miss one as you're going through the level.
Miss one?
I wasn't as good at this as you are. You are as good at Pokemon Snap as you are at Mario Kart 64.
I'm fantastic at Mario Kart 64. Now you got me nervous. Maybe I won't be as good as at Snap Switch.
Father Time gets everyone.
Oh my god, I'm so old.
Even Pokemon Snap skills.
So old. I got that birthday creeping up. Oh, I'm so tired.
No release date was given, but it is set to launch on the Nintendo Switch.
I'm excited. You know that you will definitely get my review on it when it comes out. I'm probably going to miss a podcast or two because I'll be playing it. No, I won't.
You're going to have time to play this?
I will make time to play this.
I always say that, and it doesn't happen.
Hopefully it comes out next year after I'm done with school, because then I can just use my school time to play it.
Something else you can use your school time for is watch some movies and prep for next year's Oscars, which have been delayed 2 months to April 25th, 2021.
This is due to filming, qualifying, and theatrical release delays caused by COVID-19.
That's right. There's a certain window where movies can qualify for the Oscars, otherwise they get pushed to next year's. And with so many movies stopped completely due to COVID with their production, The Batman, for example, was one of them, that delayed their release date, so now they couldn't compete in the slate that they wanted to for the year that they wanted to, unfortunately. But the Oscars is instead expanding that window, and I think we all kind of expected something like this to happen. There were a lot of questions as to what the Oscars were going to do about that, but that is the answer, I think, the right step to take.
Absolutely. We do have a quote here from Academy President David Rubin and CEO Don Hudson, who said, quote, "For over a century, movies have played an important role in comforting, inspiring, and entertaining us during the darkest of times. They certainly have this year. Our hope in extending the eligibility period of our awards date is to provide the flexibility filmmakers need to finish and release their films without being penalized for something beyond anyone's control," end quote.
I wish we had announced our delay before them, because we actually planned to delay the Broscars for this very reason. And I don't know if there was some kind of leak that happened. There's been some weird things happening with Google Notes on our phone, so I don't know if the Academy got a hold of this, but we are going to also say that the Broscars were delayed first.
Yeah, we did it
heard
first.
it here
We did
first
it like
also.
3 months ago we decided this.
But now I guess you all know as well. The surprise is out. Our hands were forced. I don't know why it's a surprise, like it's a good thing.
I mean, surprises can be bad things.
That's true. Very true.
So yes, ours will also be delayed until April.
Someone who gets nominated for Oscars and Broscars time after time is the great Christopher Nolan, and his Batman Begins film celebrated its 15-year anniversary last week.
I can't believe it's been 15 years already. I remember when the first one came out. I remember how huge it was. I remember not seeing it for a few years. But I remember the conversations people were having around it. And even my friends were in love with Cillian Murphy because he was so attractive. And I was always like, he's kind of weird looking. But it definitely pushed a lot of boundaries and really brought Batman into kind of a different eyes and different forefront on people's minds.
Batman Begins is my favorite of the Christopher Nolan trilogy. Ra's al Ghul is the main villain in the movie. And I remember back when they announced the villains as Scarecrow and Ra's, there was a lot of negative feedback from fans and from viewers because they were saying, why not the Joker? Why not the Riddler? Why not Catwoman? Why not a bigger Batman villain than Ra's al Ghul or Scarecrow? And people were also wondering, how are those two ever going to team up anyway in this film? Being that I am such a big fan of Ra's al Ghul, and yes, they did take a very realistic approach to the character, but it still worked, goes to show you that you don't have to follow the character exactly like the comic books for it to be a success or for it to work on film or TV.
All you need is Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson fucking kicked ass, and that was another thing that was different for him at the time, because it was a twist that Liam was Ra's al Ghul in the end, and the whole time, even in the merchandise, they had it as Henry Deckard, which is the first name he goes by, and they had basically Ubu as the Ra's that dies near the beginning of the film. That was merchandise Ubu. Or Ra's al Ghul, I should say. So any comic shop that bought the hot toy or figurines of that Ra's al Ghul were immediately stuck with it after the movie released. Because no one wants the fucking fake ass. It's the same thing that happened with Iron Man 3. That villain got switched. It wasn't really the Mandarin. And I remember my shop in Orlando, the one I used to work for, that one had a hot toy of the Mandarin, and they had it forever because that wasn't the fucking villain. And shops everywhere were obviously pissed off.
Of course.
But Liam Neeson at the time, getting back to that, he had always played the role of like a paternal figure or a mentor. And this time he was a villain, and he did it really fucking well. It goes to show you that these actors can always want to expand their range. They want to do something else. And when they do and they nail it, that tells you what kind of talent they really have.
He was also kind of a father figure villain.
That's true too. Yeah. And that's even crazier. He's a paternal figure. That's a bad guy in the end. So he betrays you on top of that. You as the viewer, you're like, yeah, Liam Neeson, he should train Batman. And then he's bad.
Yeah. But if Liam Neeson betrayed you, would you be mad?
No, and I would have saved him at the end of that fucking movie, too. I felt that was such a weird loophole for him.
Mhm.
I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. I'm like, well, he's right there. You kind of do. It's kind of a weird thing to... whatever, though. I mean, not many people complained, I don't think. And he does kill several people in those movies, even more than I think any of the Batmen in the other iterations in live action.
You've clearly always been a Batman fan, but when these came out, did it stir up even more excitement for that franchise or to be a Batman fan?
It definitely did, because up until that point, obviously you had the Batman animated series and you had the Timverse and Justice League and all of that great stuff. But the last Batman thing we had on the big screen was Batman and Robin. And there was that huge gap where there was just no Batman franchise for many years.
They just had to end it with Batman and Robin.
It goes to show you that you can bring shit back even with something like Batman and Robin, right? And for this, it was amazing. It was very exciting. It's like, all right, Batman on the big screen is back. The Dark Knight, of course, and we know what happened with the rest of the trilogy, but that success was massive. And the fact that they nailed it from the beginning, I think the whole franchise is owed that. And I think a lot of what Christopher Nolan has done since as well, a lot of his success thanks to the Dark Knight trilogy is all thanks to this amazing solid start that was Batman Begins.
Definitely agree. It's a movie that I want to go back and rewatch again soon. We can do it as a celebration of 15 years, but it's been a large number of years, and I think I've only seen this movie about 3 times in total. So definitely something that we need to go back and watch, really immerse ourselves in again, and really appreciate it, because even now, like you said, 15 years later, we can still think about that movie and say, wow, that was really amazing what they did for that character.
And I also love, and it wasn't intentional for them setting up the Joker in the sequel, because they weren't talking sequels after they had filmed this one, but instead Nolan set up that Joker thing of
he leaves a calling card
as like okay, Batman Begins here, and this is the world set up, and that's it. This wasn't a period of time where studios were thinking, all right, you're signed on for 3 films and we're going to make this into a big thing. He was just ending it, and it's like, look, he even has a Joker in his universe. But after they planted that seed, everyone was like, all right, we're going to get Joker in the next one, and you can't move away from that.
I remember all like the concept art that people were making, and you had him like on your walls.
The Joker, the Riddler, there was all this speculation over what other villains they were going to include in there. And this kind of has to do with Batman Begins, but I was going to say, I just learned this week that Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow was the second, I guess, technically live-action Scarecrow. Because Coolio from Batman and Robin only accepted that role, that cameo role, because he was promised to later on in the next movie, I guess that'd be Batman 5, he would be the Scarecrow and would team up with Harley Quinn and Batman Triumphant. So in a way, that was really our first Jonathan Crane-ish character.
I don't know if I'm okay that didn't happen, because I kind of want to see it now.
Yeah, me too.
But going back to Batman Begins, it did give me some of my favorite Batman lines ever.
Yeah.
Like, he's flying on rooftops. I use that one all the time, or where are the underdogs going?
That's a good one too. Or, they don't like falafel? And I'm like, well, you could feed him from his business. Just awful shit like that. And they didn't have Bullock in there. And I remember people were comparing that character to Bullock, but yeah, that was Batman Year One, where it was actually a corrupt cop.
Right.
Whereas Bullock he toes the line, but he's still very much a good cop. I think they were really trying to make it clear that in this Batman Begins universe, everything is corrupt, and Gordon is one of the very few good ones, and that's why Batman goes to him. I think the last thing we want to reflect on as we go in and kind of celebrate or reflect the 15 years is, what do you think about the take of let's ground Batman as much as possible into a real world as opposed to making it more comic book accurate like in BVS?
I think it was really cool. I think that was part of the reason that it was as successful as it was, because, okay, Gotham could be anywhere, right? And this could be a rich guy doing whatever. And yeah, these things could really happen. And especially as you got further into the trilogy, especially when you got to like the Joker, right? And it put very real people in a situation where even the audience was like, oh, which way would I go, right? There were a lot of moments of that throughout this. So I thought it was, a really smart move. Obviously, it did well, right? Because we're still talking about it 15 years later, and we're still, enjoying these movies and have a lot of great things to say about them.
It definitely stands the test of time, and that's one of the best forms of measure when you're talking about a work of art. So congratulations to Batman Begins. Give it a watch as well. You can never watch that film too many times. Every excuse is a good one to watch Batman Begins.
Something else we'll hopefully get to watch soon is another of Christopher Nolan's movies. But according to a report by the New York Times, Warner Brothers is butting heads with our friend Chris over the release of Tenet.
WB wants to postpone while Nolan wants to move ahead with its release spot to preserve the theatrical experience. We know Nolan's films are a proven success. You know it's going to do well. It doesn't specifically say in the report from what I read that they intended to postpone it and instead release it on home video. But I wouldn't be shocked if they're looking at the theatrical market now, which is non-existent for the most part, aside from like the reruns or the drive-in theaters. But they're probably very nervous about their returns on this film if they're one of the first ones, the very first blockbuster to come out after all of this.
Yeah, but I see it in the opposite way.
I
So
agree.
you release it, there's nothing else out there. And not to say that his movie wouldn't have been successful if there were other things, but they're going to say, okay, let's go to the movies. Oh, there's 2 movies out. Let's go see this one. Right? And I really think that while this sickness, this virus is still something to be careful about, people are going back out into the world. They're going out and they're doing things and they're taking the precautions, in other ways. But the grocery stores are full every time I go. And if I need to run into a store for something, it's full. And I mean, obviously my store at work is doing great. So people are still getting out there. And if you open up movies again, they're going to go.
If you build it, they will come. No, I agree. Tenet will do well whenever it does release. But I think that being one of the first ones to open theaters with would be a very good idea. And I know my market is very different from the theatrical one, but working from retail, people were very much ready to get out and spend money and pick up their things and get back to their routine. And to moviegoers, that's a big part of it. I'm ready to go see Tenet. I will be there to see Tenet, though, whenever it does release.
They announced that theaters in our state were opening in July, and you're like, okay, I'm buying our tickets right now. Which day? Which day do you want to go? And I'm like, it's like a month and a half from now. Like, whichever, just choose one.
I am excited for Tenet, and when we do see it, we will have a review for you right here on the podcast.
It's currently set to release July 31st.
Tons of news this week, and kicking off our comic book bits with Marvel Comics, which has announced the Rise of Ultraman #1 of 5 for a September release.
We have a press release which reads, quote, storytelling masters Kyle Higgins from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Matt Groom, together with superstar artist Francesco Mana from Fantastic Four, Michael Cho from Captain America, and Guri Huru, that one from The Unstoppable Wasp, will take fans back to the days of darkness where the terrifying kaiju lurk, end quote.
Alex Ross will be doing the covers to the issues. Ultraman is something that my mom grew up watching.
Yeah?
It was one of the, even back then, they didn't have a lot of channels, but in Mexico, they played a lot of Ultraman. They played Speed Racer, and she grew up watching Ultraman. So in turn, I'm familiar with Ultraman and Speed Racer and all of the same things that she grew up with. So I will be getting this mini-series for myself and my mom and see how much of it is like the classic show. And I'm guessing it is from the looks of the cover. They're not going for one of the new reboots or iterations of the character.
I don't know a lot about Ultraman. So is he pretty much just like a Power Ranger meets Godzilla?
Yes. So he transforms and then he gets giant and he fights monsters. And yeah, it's part of that, before that era of Power Rangers and whatnot, but in that era of Godzilla. And I don't know if he ever fought Godzilla or alongside. I'd have to look that up. But that would be a hell of a modern matchup. Imagine at the end of Godzilla versus King Kong.
No,
fucking
stop.
Ultraman.
Because then Marvel would take it over.
I've said some things I regret.
You don't want to see the next Godzilla Marvel movie?
Hell fucking no. No, there will be no other Godzilla movies when that shit happens. This I will watch. This I will read, though. And I'm glad. I will give Marvel their credit. They're trying something very new with this. And rightfully so, it is a 5-issue miniseries because I don't think this would work as an ongoing. I know one sub in the many years I've worked in the comic industry that has ever mentioned Ultraman. So I think he and I are going to be the only two readers of it in the store.
Yeah, but has there ever been an Ultraman comic before?
I'm sure there were in the 2000s, but not that I'm aware of.
Because I really, I'm interested in it. I think this is an easy sell of Power Rangers meets Godzilla.
I wish Marvel would do returnability like the indie publishers do, because then I would order to pull for all my Power Rangers subs and take a chance on that. But it'll depend also on how many people end up pre-ordering, because if it ends up being a good amount, then I'm like, you know what? Maybe we could push this for them.
Something else Marvel is trying to push is being petty-ass bitches.
I'm on their side on this one, though, but I don't think this is the way to do it.
They're not doing it the right way. That's why they're being petty. Have your opinion. But anyway, okay. So Marvel has drawn the line on New Comic Book Day with, quote, on sale Wednesday, and, quote, variants against DC's Tuesday on sale switch.
So these covers bear the words on sale Wednesday on a solid color alongside the title's logo and an emblem representing the characters. So it is literally a blank cover with the words on sale Wednesday, but in different colors based on who the team is.
So what that sounds like to me is not paying artists to draw variant covers.
That is exactly what Mitch Gerrits was saying on Twitter of, hey, how do we figure out a way to not pay artists for a variant cover? And apparently this is the way. And guess what? I don't see many retailers buying this at all.
So they're not only being petty-ass bitches to DC, but they're being petty to their artists.
I would not be happy if I were a variant artist on Marvel's side.
No, absolutely not. But Marvel does have a statement about this. Quote, Marvel is back with new comic book issues on July 15th. Since Wednesday has been known as New Comic Book Day for many years, Marvel is offering up a reminder in the way of these variant covers. Retailers can use them in-store to remind customers that every Wednesday is the day for new comics and to make mine Marvel, end quote.
I pulled a quote here from the Newsarama section by user John Ara, who said, quote, people wonder why DC and Marvel can't work together anymore. It's petty stunts like this. Who really wants those ugly variants? And who is this supposed to cater to other than just, we're not DC? It's garbage, and no one ever thought Marvel was going to leave Diamond. They've literally done nothing with COVID-19 happening, didn't assure anyone or do anything to help retailers or even talk about helping retailers, end quote. He is not wrong on all of this. Mm-hmm. However, I do think there was some apprehension as to whether or not they were also going to seek their own retailers or their own distributors. But this is one of the many signs that Marvel's saying, no, we're sticking with Diamond. We're sticking with the New Comic Book Day Wednesdays. I'm glad that message is there because the rest of the publishers are also not moving to Wednesday. And I think DC will eventually also move to Wednesday, but it's going to be months down the line. These variants are really dumb, though.
Yeah, and Marvel easily could have just released a statement that said, we're sticking with Diamond, we're staying on Wednesdays. That's it. That's all they had to do. They didn't have to print stupid comic book covers.
Or in July, make it a part of your marketing.
Right.
Put it on banners, put it on, they already tweet out the new comics anyway, so put it as a part of their Make Mine Wednesdays or something, whatever they want to say. Make their same slogan they're using here. That would have been fine, but I think this is going to be a loss of money not for them, because they didn't pay anything for those fucking things. No massive artists.
No, they got some intern to do it who they're not even paying anyway.
I know for sure at our store, we're going to do special orders only on those things because
nobody's going to want
extras,
them.
Yeah, any extras I order are going to sit there from now until the end of time.
We're going to be using them as toilet paper when the next round comes through.
Yeah, that's true. But Marvel has also added Diamond's Back the Comeback logo onto a variant cover for Empire #1. So this, I think, is a little bit closer to the right direction.
What is Back the Comeback?
So Diamond had this big initiative and they put this sticker, this logo that says Back the Comeback on there. Essentially, they were saying their comeback is going to be greater than their setback. It was just an initiative, a cry of courage to retailers and to the comic book world of we're not going anywhere. We're going to push harder than ever to make sure that we're back and supporting our stores for the loss that was April and that they continue to take due to people being out of work or losing out on a lot of business. So what they did is they asked publishers, hey, will you please put back the comeback logo somewhere on your books? And some publishers have agreed to it, like Image Comics, Boom Studios, and now Marvel with this one issue. So I think, to me, the reason I added this on the notes is because any publisher that agreed to put that logo on there, their intention is to stick with Diamond as their distributor for the foreseeable future.
I like how Marvel put it on a comic that nobody knows about.
Well, that was supposed to be their flagship title for the event of this summer. It is what it is, though. It's not their fault that this thing isn't really happening. However, there wasn't really a ton of pre-orders anyway for Empire. It didn't seem like it caught on fire as much as previous events did, like Absolute Carnage or War of the Realms.
Empire.
Jesus.
My dad jokes are on par.
But I'm at least glad that they agreed to put that on any one of the books.
Before you told me other publishers were doing it, I just assumed that Marvel was in the Mafia too. So I'm glad you told me that it's a unified front.
Speaking of unified fronts, this is some fun news from the 90s. A trade of characters almost happened between Marvel and DC. They're in that period that wasn't great for comics.
There was a proposed swap for She-Hulk for Martian Manhunter.
A quote here from Ron Mars, one of the DC versus Marvel writers, who said, quote, I felt like those were great picks because at least in terms of power sets, they're kind of redundant characters. She-Hulk is, well, a Lady Hulk, and Martian Manhunter is pretty close to Superman, just green with a big brow. They both would have seemed more original in the opposite universe. Eventually, we got word that it wasn't going to happen because legal entities at both companies found it too much of a nightmare, end quote.
I'm really glad it didn't happen. I really like Martian Manhunter. I don't just see him as like a Superman.
I'm with you there, and I also liked the She-Hulk series from about 5 years ago where it was literally her just being a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we would have gotten anything like that had she been a DC character. And I get where they're coming from. Each universe is kind of missing. Marvel has tried to make their own Superman several times, and it hasn't really taken off. And DC, well, I guess they have Doomsday, who's kind of like their whole character, but they don't have one that's...
They have Solomon Grundy.
Right, that's true.
And but Bizarro.
Not someone that's usually on the hero team or someone that they can merchandise. You can't merchandise Solomon Grundy.
You can. You can merchandise Bizarro.
Not successfully. So I get that trade and the mentality behind it. I could have seen how that would have happened. I don't know which company would have been on the better receiving end of that. I guess it would have depended on how they used the character.
Exactly. I really feel like, at least with what Marvel has built, there's not really a place for Martian Manhunter. He fits really well in the Justice League, where he just kind of chills out of the Watchtower and is that psychic link between all the characters so that, you know, they can we'll actually talk about in our comic book review, the stuff that he does. Yeah. Right? He was a piece of that too. So he fits really, really well, and they're able to utilize him. And, you know, of course, he's got that tragic backstory, which we love from those characters. And I just kind of feel like that wouldn't really fit in the Marvel universe as well. But at the same time, you know, maybe DC wouldn't have used She-Hulk very well.
We also wouldn't have gotten Martian Manhunter in Zack Snyder's Justice League next year. Who knows what kind of change that would have been. But just a fun thing to add on to this week's.
Sticking with DC, something that I'm not quite sure we need. DC is celebrating the launch of HBO Max with a digital-only book titled To the Max.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for HBO Max, and I'm excited for DC. This free digital comic anthology centers on 3 everyday people, so it's relatable. I'm an everyday person.
You sure are.
And according to DC's press release, Hector, Brian, and Olivia... Clever, HBO. Look at that. They're fucking on top of all the levels. And then a dog named, you guessed it, Max.
Oh my God.
That is fucking brilliant. Good on HBO Max for trying something different.
So different. We do have a quote here. I can't.
I'm guessing you're remembering a funny Louis C.K. bit that's unrelated to any of this.
Totally unrelated. Why don't you tell us what Jim Lee said?
DC Chief Creative Officer, Publisher Jim Lee said, quote, "We are excited to share these new and original stories of Hector, Brian, Olivia, and Max with the DC fans and all fans of great entertainment content. These are superhero stories at their core, but they are also a pop culture scavenger hunt for the most media savvy," end quote.
These... I'm remembering another funny comedian, clearly. So these will be available on the DC Universe streaming service, DCComics.com, Apple iBookstore, Google Play Store, Hoopla, Overdrive, the DC Comics app, Madefire, and more.
I can't wait to check these out, and I absolutely will.
You're going to read them?
I will read every single one of these, every single issue of To the Max, as available on HBO Max and on my favorite streaming service app.
Are you going to review them on the show?
If people want me to, yeah. And it'll be a great review.
I want
It's going to be a good review of all of these issues.
When are you going to get HBO Max just tattooed on you? Are you just going to marry HBO Max?
Depends on what they decide to do with Justice League 2. We're going to see what it takes.
If they announce Justice League 2, would you get an HBO Max tattoo?
Depends on what they do with Justice League 3.
You're just going to keep it going forever?
Yeah.
Well, good on them for trying something new.
I agree. Good on them. Great move. Happy to talk about this and cover this on the show. More news from Warner Brothers. They are hosting a mega 24-hour virtual fan experience that will feature everything in the DC multiverse on August 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific time. This was all over Twitter, all over Facebook, all over Instagram. Every single social media account that Warner Brothers had for DC posted in relation to this, what they were going to include in this fandom event.
At DC Fandom, fans will be treated to highly anticipated announcements, exclusive footage, and the latest news from WB game, film and TV, and comics, as well as an opportunity to hear from the cast and creators from its vast library of DC films.
Another channel that published about DC Fandom was Zack and Debbie Snyder, who included an image of Zack Snyder's Justice League. Many are speculating that this is where we will get our first trailer to Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Oh, yeah, that would make so much sense. You do it for 24 hours, you don't know when it's going to show up, you're going to have all those people watching it for 24 hours.
So what's happening here is San Diego Comic-Con is doing their own virtual event around the same time, but Warner Brothers is doing theirs separate from them and instead are doing a standalone thing that I'm assuming they have more control over because they're building an entire website that's going to have these different sections that celebrate the different quote-unquote multiverse like TV, film, video games, comics, whatever DC fandom you have, there's going to be a section for you with announcements.
It's actually really smart because, one, like you said, you're able to have a little more control over it. But think of how much more they can do because it's not just going to be a 1 hour section, right? You're not going to have to take 3 hours out of your day to be there for 1 hour to answer weird questions sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You can have things that are very focused. You can even tell fans, hey, submit your questions early. We're going to pick the most common ones or, really have control over that. But yeah, like you said, you can you put up things about comics. You can put up things about the movies. You can just be really focused, but in a much wider category.
So the different sections on the website include DC Kidverse, which are family-friendly content and activities that are going to be on there. DC Insiderverse, which is a 101-style introduction to the multiverse with Jim Lee. There's DC Funverse, which is going to have cool shareables and exclusive giveaways. DC Uverse, which are going to be user-generated content from the fans, and DC Watchverse, which are going to be hours of must-see content, including panels and behind-the-scenes screenings. It's kind of like the Nintendo Directs in a way, or the Pokemon presentation they did earlier, where you can have anyone tune in from around the world, and as you mentioned, it gets rid of that whole thing of, I waited in this panel for 3 hours to see this trailer and suddenly they release it or they leak it online.
Right.
And then you're the company that's like, do we release this or leak it online? Because then we're not making it as exclusive to the people who waited many hours. This gets rid of all of this and makes it accessible to everyone. Yes, there is something to be said about being at San Diego Comic-Con at the panel and celebrating and watching with everyone else, but that's just not feasible this year.
So I feel like we already kind of hit the 2020 jackpot with release the Snyder Cut. We have Batman the Animated Series comics back.
Yes.
We have Pokémon Snap coming out. I just had to throw that in there. I'm going to throw that in there forever. What could they announce at this where your mind would even just, like, even better than anything you could imagine?
Well, it's going to be the next Arkham game. We already know that they're working on it. Whatever it is, whether it's an Arkham game or a Superman game, whatever it is from WB Games or Rocksteady, that's going to be the big hit, I think, at this event.
But what for you? Is that what's going to get you excited?
I would want, you did the Batman the Animated Series comic book, do a special kind of, they did that with Harley Quinn already. Do more of that. If you give me more Batman the Animated Series in some form, if you adapt even the comic books into a cartoon or a special, that would be huge for me. I think getting the cast that is still alive and working back on for a project, for an animated series, I think that would be amazing.
What if they did a special and it's Batman the Animated Series, same art style, same voice actors, but they're all old?
So Batman Beyond?
No, just like it could still be animated series and they're still trying to do their thing, but they're all old now. So like Harley Quinn's trying to flip, but she can't do cartwheels because she's old.
That's Batman Beyond. I mean, you can't not do that without Batman Beyond.
I mean, I guess, but I just don't want Terry McGinnis there. He's whiny.
What about for you? What would they need to announce to have you just be floored?
Pokémon Snap. Available on DC also.
A Gotham City map where you have Zubats.
Oh man, that'd be so cool.
Ghosts.
That's definitely not going to happen. I would love to see Gotham City Sirens movie. I still want that to happen.
By David Ayer,
yeah,
yes.
That would really make me happy if that's what they, released, or even like a spinoff of Harley Quinn, the TV show, because I'm really enjoying that. Where it's Gotham City Sirens, and we do get that a little bit, but not quite as much. Like, yeah, put all three of them in an apartment and just let them do their thing.
And for you listening as well, let us know on Twitter, what would be the one thing that you want to see announced at DC Fandom on August 22nd?
Sticking with DC, but moving on over into the comic book side, Batman writer James Tynion IV has said that Tom King and Clay Mann's Batman Catwoman maxi series will not affect his ongoing core title, and that it's, quote, moving outside the bounds of continuity, end quote.
Tynion said, quote, "Right now we're focusing on the core Batman story happening in the pages of Batman. I'm very excited to read Batman Catwoman in the same way I'm excited to read Three Jokers, but neither of them really have much effect on the core story I'm telling," end quote.
He went on to say, "I'm jealous that I did not write Batman Catwoman because they're so perfect together, and I should have just done it while I had the chance."
I know Clay Mann was a bit cheeky on Twitter about this and saying that it does still count in a way, and I know Tom King's continuity of Batman, when he was writing it, told this future story of Batman and Catwoman being together. They have Helena Wayne, and this is filling in the gaps in between. So in his continuity that he's working in, which apparently is also James Tynion's, they're supposed to be at the same universe at the same time. And I'm not a continuity guy where they need to be. I don't care. This is fine. I just want a good story. But to pretend that it's not in continuity, I think is a little silly. But if they want to say that Tom King's stories are now their own, just so that we can see what he would have done had he written up to Batman 100, is just fine with me too.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think probably, and I don't know, but I think probably more along the lines of what he was trying to say is they're not going to be together in my comic, which is fine. Cool, it happens in the same universe, but that doesn't mean that you have to work that into your comic. And I don't know if that's what people kept saying to him and he got pissy about it. And so that's why he responded the way that he did. But you don't have to say it's not in the same universe. It very well can be. It's just a different point of time that you're telling.
Something I'll tell, what I've always said on here, and I'll continue to say, and I say it at the shop too, is don't get so wrapped up or worried about where certain things fit in the universe. Just enjoy the story that it's telling. Be more concerned with the quality of the story itself.
Right. It doesn't matter what story you read. Batman and Catwoman are always together.
Or you can write a really good story where Talia and Batman are together. And that's what matters, the quality of the story.
That
That's what I'm saying
sounds
here. I'm
like
glad you
rape.
agree.
Sounds like rape to me, because that's what happened. And you can't
In
pretend it
one
didn't.
form of it,
You
but then
can't
in another
pretend it
form,
didn't.
Batman and they made a love child named Damian Wayne, and it's amazing, and it's great, and he's the
Or she
greatest
was an
Robin.
underage child and she raped him, which is not okay. But Batman and Catwoman did create a love child. And it's true.
Yes, they too also created
in all forms.
a lesser child, but
In
they
all
did. Damian Wayne is greater than Helena. True or false?
In our next news,
Batman Catwoman was originally scheduled to begin in February. However, at the time, King stated that the series would be delayed to allow Clayman to complete the interior art without interruption.
take all the time you need. I'm a patient person.
Final bit of news this week is on the sadder note, but it is also a celebration on the life of Denny O'Neil, legendary Batman writer who passed away at 81.
O'Neill is best known for his work at DC Comics, which included writing Batman, Detective Comics, and Legends of the Dark Knight.
Along with editor Julius Schwartz and artist Neil Adams, Denny helped guide Batman back to his darker roots after a period of campiness thanks to the popular 1960s show, which is huge in the history of Batman. Without Denny or Neil Adams, without this iconic run, without them bringing back so many of these characters and villains, you would not have Batman as you have him today.
During his time on Batman, he created and co-created Ra's al Ghul, Talia al Ghul, Leslie Tompkins, Azrael, and Richard Dragon.
He also revitalized Joker and Two-Face as modern DC villains.
That's amazing.
Incredible moneymakers for DC Comics right now. Incredible characters for the history of comics and fiction in general. Denny did so much for the world of comics and for Batman that it made me happy to see so much reflection on that and on these characters and on seeing where we are now and respecting what gave us all of this through incredible writers like Denny.
We do have several reactions, though. The first one comes from Bob Harris, editor-in-chief of DC, who said, quote, Denny was an amazingly talented writer and editor. More than that, he was a beloved member of the DC family, and he will be sorely missed, end quote.
Another reaction from the industry comes from writer Mark Miller, who said, quote, rest in peace, Denny O'Neil. I was such an enormous fan of this guy that I still have his faxed handwritten notes for my Superman Red Sun proposal as a souvenir in my office. A true gent who pretty much reinvented what a comic book writer was capable of. End quote. Even Superman Red Sun. Isn't that incredible? An influence on one of my favorite comics of all time?
Absolutely amazing. Where would we be without him?
That's one bit I did not know if it hadn't been for Mark Miller tweeting this out.
Our next reaction comes from DC Chief Creative Officer and Publisher Jim Lee, who said, quote, rest in peace, Denny O'Neil, one of visionary architects of DC Comics who helped revive Batman in the 1970s and remains my favorite Green Lantern writer to date, end quote.
This one comes from the other side. Marvel's creative director Joe Quesada, who co-created Azrael along with Denny, he said, quote, words cannot express what Denny meant to me and so many others. I learned more in the short span of time that I was fortunate enough to work with both he and Archie Goodwin than perhaps the entirety of my years in the biz, end quote.
Such wonderful words about him from so many people that we really admire as well. And the final comes from writer Scott Snyder, who said, quote, crushed to hear about Denny O'Neil. I met him for the first time in 2012 filming the extras reel for Batman Year One, and I couldn't stop geeking out. He was so kind and encouraging, though, and I feel lucky to have gotten to know him over the years. True giant. Lights dim in Gotham tonight, end quote.
As we've heard already, huge impact on many greats in the comic industry today, many changes and revitalization to some of today's biggest characters as well. From the characters he's made or the work he's done, what would you say is the part that you gravitate the most towards or your favorite creation from Denny?
Definitely Ra's al Ghul.
I agree. Yeah.
But such an amazing character. You can tell that so much depth was put into him, and so many characters evolve over the years, but even though Raish may have evolved in little pieces, he's really pretty much still the same as he was at his core.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show that, okay, how many years ago was it? Like 30, 40 years ago?
It was in the 70s,
Oh,
I believe,
it's even longer. Oh my God, how long was 40 years ago? It was still the 80s then. So 50 years ago, right? That he took the time to help co-create this character that was so incredibly complex and deep that he didn't need to be changed in all these years to still remain incredibly relevant and just as impactful as he is.
In one of the Word Balloon interviews that he had, he talked about Batman and making him into the detective that he is, bringing that back to his roots, right? Just like his classic comics. And he said, he compared him to Sherlock Holmes and said, Batman doesn't really have a Moriarty. And that's where the inspiration for Ra's al Ghul came, of someone who can be Batman's intellectual equal as a detective and did something more than that. I think he's greater than Moriarty. Like, he created a Moriarty type character that's even better and elevated it to something more. We've seen so much out of Ra's al Ghul in all of the different facets. And as you said, that's testament to the character that he's remained very much unchanged at his core many, many years later. He's still that character that we all know and love from the comics, from the cartoons, and from the movies.
While it is so upsetting to have to say goodbye to one of these really great influencers of DC Comics, it's so wonderful to see all the heartfelt comments and stories that are coming out of this from people, like I said, that we really admire, and to see how he influenced them to give us the content that we really love.
And if the comic pronunciation wasn't enough, Denny, from all of the interviews and up until his final days, pronounced it Ra's al Ghul. He's the co-creator of the character.
Probably even on his deathbed, he was probably like, tell Daniel it's Ra's.
Tell the world. So here it is once again. Out of respect for Denny, call his co-creation the right name. It's Ra's al Ghul.
But that does wrap up our news for the week. And now we can move into our Patreon shoutouts. Shoutouts to everyone who helps make the show possible.
First shout out this week goes out to Jose on Instagram at Kingdom T-shirt. He posted up a nice sneak peek at the decals that went out to our Patreon backers.
Very cool. Next on our list, we have Elizabeth at EP Lifts.
She tweeted, quote, I was already scaling back DC titles. If I didn't catch up on a title during quarantine, it was a sign I wasn't feeling it. But with the latest news and after talking to FLCS about the impact, I will be dropping most DC titles and putting that money towards other publishers. The titles I'm keeping will be Batman, Detective Comics, Flash, and Strange Adventures. I am open for suggestions of titles from non-DC publishers. Note, I have no interest in Marvel and I already get Ice Cream Man, end quote. We have a lot of indie brokettes that listen to the podcast, so if you have any suggestions for Elizabeth on some titles that you're reading that you're enjoying, head on over to her Twitter at EPLifts. I totally get where she's coming from on taking a stance against DC on all of this. I still will stand by what I said last week, where I don't think this is going to change their mind as far as going back to Diamond, unfortunately, and yes, this does impact comic shops in a negative way. But I have also started thinking about some of the writers and artists that are also going to be hurting from not supporting the publishers in trying to send a message to them. So it's a gray area, and I totally get it. That being said, if she ends up picking up more DC titles, great. Pick up what you like, pick up what you don't like, or, drop what you don't like. But there's some great indie titles out there. It is truly a golden era for independent comic books, and I know the Brokehead Core have some great suggestions to send over.
Next up, we have Nick F. You can find him at Jersey Whisperer and at Nick's Nerd News 1.
Nick tweeted, quote, does anyone else have the inability to be sitting while on the phone? I don't know what it is, but I must roam around my home slowly cleaning, organizing small shit the whole time, end quote.
Me. I can't sit on the phone.
I do that when I'm talking on the phone. I got to be like walking around and doing something, especially if they're on speaker.
I'm always pacing. If I'm on the phone, I'm always pacing. It's weird. even if I'm like calling to make a doctor's appointment, like I go out in the garage. I don't know. Just if there's other people in the room, I feel weird using, I guess, my manager voice, whatever I use. But yeah, I have a very difficult time sitting down.
Do you think it'd be different if we had, and I don't know if Nick works at a place where you're on your feet all day, but do you think it's different because you and I work in jobs that require us to be walking around and standing?
Potentially. I mean, I was a receptionist at one point for about 1.5 years, so I had to sit to be on the phone. But I feel like even then I was on my, like if I was at home and somebody called, I was on my feet.
I just picture you now as a receptionist, like every time it rings, you get up and start walking around. It's a corded phone still, though.
And it's still like wrapping around me. And
yes.
Yep. I could do it. I have a great receptionist voice.
Let's hear it.
Thank you for calling Reasons I'm Broke. How may I direct your call?
Hi, do y'all buy Pokemon cards?
We do, but it entirely depends on which set they're from.
Well, they're the old ones. They're like the original ones.
Well, you're welcome to email over some pictures. I can give you Daniel's email address, and he'll take a look, and he'll be in contact with you shortly.
That's not bad.
See?
That's pretty good.
I know. I'm pretty spot on.
That's a call I get all the time, by the way. Accent and all. That's not a negative thing. That's literally what I get every single week.
Well, now you know how to respond.
Just like you, yeah.
Just like me.
Final shout out this week goes out to Julian W. on Twitter at Kage023 and at Lazy Gaming Guys.
They were streaming the One Punch Man game on their channel last week.
They stream every single Wednesday night at 10:30 Eastern Time, so make sure to check them out on their Lazy Gaming Guys YouTube channel. There should be a link on Julian's Twitter, at the very least on their Lazy Gaming Guys one, but they do a different game every single week. They also have a podcast that's available on Apple Podcasts and your favorite podcatcher. Just search Lazy Gaming Guys.
Are they going to do Pokémon Snap when it comes out?
I don't know if they have a card capture for the Nintendo Switch, but I hope they eventually do.
They're going to get one.
I know right now they use the PS4 streaming thing, which is fine and it's easy, but hopefully one day they get something that lets them stream something that doesn't have it built in, like the Switch.
Hopefully. But thank you so much, Julian W., Nick F., Elizabeth, and Jose for your Patreon support.
If you too would like your shout out every month, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimebroke. Join the Patreon Brokehead Core, and you too can get your shout out along with many other perks, including getting the podcast early every single week.
But of course, our podcast will always be free. The best thing you can do is let your friends know about us. Let them know how much you like the show. Let us know how much you like the show in our Discord lounge.
There is a link to our Discord lounge on our website, thereasonsimbroke.com, or on the description of today's episode. Make sure to join on there, and there's an ongoing chat with all kinds of brokettes.
And now we can move into our jammed pack comic book highlights of the week.
First one this week comes from Image Comics and Top Cow. It's called A Man Among Ye #1. Even though this did not win the Twitter poll, Palpa Kelli proved this one through.
Hell yes, I did. We couldn't not. We couldn't not review this one.
I did pick it up thinking maybe you'd like it, and it turns out I was right.
Clearly. I didn't see this one on the list. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why? What? But this is written by Stephanie Phillips with art by Craig Kermack, and the colors is Brittany Pezzillo.
What'd you think of A Man Among Ye?
I loved it.
It's a retelling of Anne Bonny.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you got the same vibes from it, but it felt very much like Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean
100%.
in many ways.
So true. 100%. 100%. Very true. This book, high school Kelli is so happy right now because the dude pirate, John something, who they call Jack something,
right?
But his real name is John something, looks just like Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whoever drew him, they're like, just draw Jack Sparrow, but don't get in trouble. Because there's one scene where it's like a close-up of his eyes, and they're like pointing, and I'm like, that is Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I thought that was taken from a screen cap of Pirates for a second. I'm like, did they?
It looked very similar, yes. And then his love interest, Anne Bonny, looks like me. She's a redhead. She's running around being a badass. She's essentially me as a pirate more so than any other iteration of me as a pirate I've ever seen before. And it made me so excited to find out that they're in love, and the crew is all pissed off because they're like, meh, she's a girl, and he's treating her like an equal, meh. And then I just fell in love with Jack Sparrow even more because I'm like, he treats his woman like an equal, and she's all like, I'm not your woman, but they're doing the hanky-panky.
Right.
Very clearly.
Every time I read the crew like, oh, a woman, I just read it as, we only want men here.
Why is there a lady on board? Why is she sleeping in the captain's quarters? I want to sleep in the captain's quarters.
Yeah, I said it on Discord. I thought the artwork was okay. Mm-hmm. It's not bad. I mean, it is an indie book. I've never read anything with Craig Kermax. I don't know if they're up and coming or not. Maybe they're a longtime Top Cow producer, but the artwork wasn't bad. And the writing did catch me enough to where I'm like, all right, let's see where this is going. There's a hook at the very end of the issue where it's like, this is going to throw a whole new dynamic to what's currently happening. And I really like the way that Anne Bonny is written in this. Mm-hmm. She really is a badass.
Yeah,
She's
she is.
saving the other characters, the other pirates.
She killed that one guy ruthlessly. He's like... They took over the ship and he was still alive. He's like, please, I don't want to die this way. And she's like, well, you're gonna. And he spits in her face. So she just burns him alive. And I was like, oh my God, yes.
Right. And yet, even though there is this strong character behind it, she's still vulnerable around this Jack character. It seems to be between these two characters. There is vulnerability. There's a history there. So I'm in, and it is something that I added onto our polls.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely in. Did you catch who the character was at the end? Did you read the little blurb at the end?
I know what character you're talking about, but is it historically someone else?
Yes.
Okay, no, I didn't catch
It's another historical pirate.
Gotcha.
Which is even more cool because I'm like, oh my God, they're together. But yeah, super cool. I love this the most because I'm so into pirates and I'm so into that kind of world, and it's so parallel to, it's me as a pirate dating Jack Sparrow. Oh my God. That's one of the reasons that I like it the most, but it was an extremely entertaining story, and I do really like how they've built her character. And we're going to see what happens with Norrington, who got his face burned or whatever. And is clearly in love with Jack Sparrow, too. We have to take him down because look what he did to my face.
He's got to kiss it and make it better.
I mean, we got to burn him. Up next, we have the Brocat Pick comic of Dark Knight's Death Metal #1 of 6.
This is written by Scott Snyder with art by Greg Capullo and colors by FCO Plasencia.
There's Plasencia doing his colorist name thing.
I will summarize this book with, if you enjoyed Dark Knight's Metal, you will enjoy Death Metal. If you did not like Dark Knight's Metal, you will not like DC Death Metal. Am I right?
I will summarize this comic with, who cares?
I expected that reaction. I definitely did.
I know you did.
This one is even bigger than Dark Knight's Metal because it includes the multiverse, the Dark Multiverse, Dr. Manhattan, and anti-Dark Dr. Manhattan, apparently. He's hinted that there's going to be an evil Darkseid Batman as well, and there's all kinds of evil Batman in here, including the T-Rex from the Batcave as Batman, because of course Batman, while he was dying, instead sent his consciousness into that robot. There's a lot of insanity in this.
Batman is turning into that Louis C.K. joke where you're just spreading your sperm everywhere. He's just spreading his consciousness everywhere. I will say the one piece of this book that I think I really liked was seeing Swamp Thing and how he's just on fire now, and he's still really weak but still doing his thing. But there were some things I didn't agree with. I don't think Wonder Woman would ever work with this kind of Batman. I think she would have died long before, even though it was to save her people, to save her sisters. I still think she never would have agreed into this Batman's plan for any reason.
Yeah, and I will chalk that up to this is either a far off future or at least another telling of these characters. A lot of what Dark Knight's Metal was and a lot of what this is, and really what Scott Snyder does, can be interpreted as out of character if you really take that to heart. That aside, though, I am glad that it looks like Wonder Woman is the main focus of this miniseries of Dark Knight's Metal, which is a nice change from what Scott's been doing in the past with Dark Knight's Metal and even his Batman work like Last Night on Earth. I wasn't expecting, even though the solicitation did focus on Wonder Woman, I didn't expect it to be this heavily focused on her, which was, I think, a positive in it.
I didn't expect to care so little.
Jeez.
No, I enjoyed some pieces of it. I enjoyed the artwork and seeing some things. And I actually did kind of like T-Rex Batman because he had that back and forth with Wonder Woman where she's like, can you throw batarangs? And he's like, I'm working on it. I'm like, yeah, leave him alone, Wonder Woman. Let T-Rex Batman with his tiny arms do his thing. But I feel that I missed out on a lot because I didn't read previous Dark Knight's Metal. So stuff's going on and I'm like, I don't know what this is. I don't know where all these Batmen came from.
I think even if you had, I don't think that it ties in too heavily into it. And I know Scott Snyder said he wrote this as everything counts, every crisis that ever happened counts, and everything is going to be referenced in my story. So you get that in this. If you're heavy into DC lore, there's going to be a reference to it in this series in some form.
Well, you can tell me those references. I think I'm good with number one.
I think one thing that I will say on Word Balloon, Scott Snyder was saying that they're very conscious about the state of things right now in the world. And they said that there's plans for growing this into a massive thing with many one-shots, many crossovers, if the sales support it. But they said that if they don't, then they still have this very focused plan on just getting death metal out with a couple of tie-ins here and there. But there are plans to really blow this up into way more if this really takes off. And so far, issue 1 was ordered very heavily by comic shops. And I will say from the sales today, readers are going to pick up and are going to sub and have subbed to Dark Knight's death metal.
Our final comic book highlight this week, one that you have been waiting for forever. Batman, The Adventures Continue, number 1.
Written by the great Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, art by the great Ty Templeton, and colors by the great Monica Kubina.
Was this everything you wanted it to be and more?
It's the return of Batman, the animated series, as if it never stopped, as if the Bruce Timm-verse always continued. Holy shit, I could have seen this as a Batman Superman Adventures or an episode of Superman the Animated Series. This particular first issue was heavily focused on Batman and Lex Luthor, and I think we need more of that from this animated universe. You didn't see too much of a back and forth between those characters, not enough at least, and I don't think you could ever get enough. But this was such an amazing, simple story at its core. It is an episode of the animated series, but it also sets up characters that are going to show up in later issues. In this first one, you get your first hint at Jason Todd, which we didn't get at all in the animated series, but all of this is an answer of, what if we did have Deathstroke? What if we did have Jason Todd? What if we did have more Phantasm? And that's amazing to me. Any more content of Batman the Animated Series is a positive, and they did it really well with this first issue. I
did have a few things that kind of bothered me about it. So yes, definitely felt like an issue or an episode of all those things that you just mentioned, but I wasn't really thrilled with the way they handled Andrea Beaumont.
Andrea was in this issue?
Yeah, she was the redhead.
No, that was one of, you talking about the drunk one. That wasn't Andrea Belmont.
Oh, who is that?
She was in the animated series early on, and they name her in this, but it's not Andrea Belmont. It's one of the many ladies that want to try to hook up with Bruce. Okay, because I thought it was her,
and I was like, why is she acting drunk and asking why they never got back together?
No, it shouldn't be, because it's one of the many women that he got with, and they want to marry him, but they won't. It definitely wasn't her.
Okay, well, now I feel better. Okay, that doesn't bother me anymore. The other thing that bothered me is the very end, the very last scene with Jason Todd, where he pulls out his gun.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it was very light, the entire thing, and then they're like, and now it's dark with my gun, and I'm going to shoot this guy. And I was like, it's a little off-putting.
If it was dark, he would have shot that guy.
I know he would have, but I feel like it was just light, like, no, gun. Anyway, I thought his design was cool anyway, and it did very much feel like an episode of Batman the Animated Series, kind of flowed that way. I could hear Kevin Conroy's voice. I could hear Lex Luthor. I could hear Superman like, you saved me, my man.
It fit perfectly with animated series Superman. He quote unquote got captured like, oh no, you got to save me, Batman. And then Batman saves him and he's like, oh, right. Like it's all a part of Superman's little fantasy. He was never in danger.
No, he wasn't. Oh, I was mind controlled.
Oh, that kryptonite was enough to make me break from his spell. It wasn't your love at all.
It wasn't your heartbeat so close by that I can hear at all times no matter where I am in the galaxy.
My true kryptonite. Superman loves Batman.
All
always
the time.
And forever.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I will... And it's not the book's fault at all, but something I'm not used to and I don't like with these type of releases is this was a digital first release and then they released the comics, which I'm grateful for. I'm glad we're getting a physical release of them with the variant covers and everything. But because it is a digital first issue, the panels are laid out, broken down horizontally in half pages. So the panels can't be freely set up as Ty Templeton would like. He is restricted to that half-page format. So unfortunately, as your eye goes across, you see that horizontal line throughout the entire book. And it just makes me a little frustrated in that they're restricting Ty Templeton in that way because I want Ty Templeton at 100% on something like this. But that being said, I'm glad we're getting any of it at all. You know what I mean? It's a return. I'm happy about it. I bought every covers and I'm subbed to every single cover that they release of this simply to support and hopefully bring us more issues in the future.
DC's listening. They're like, cancel it all. Daniel doesn't like it. Shut it down.
Like, no.
They just stopped the printing press entirely.
Yeah.
Like on half pages.
I like you do that motion of pushing down. Like that's how they
pull
do
down
it.
the lever now.
It's not computerized at all.
Nope, 0%.
Any other thoughts on the return of Batman the Animated Series?
No, I'm happy it's back. I feel like 2020 is a great year to be alive.
For certain things.
There's certain things. There's ups and downs.
Yeah, very highs and very low lows.
Let me ask you, if somebody, you know that meme where you have to push the button, right? And it's like, you'll get the release of the Snyder Cut and Batman the Animated Series and comics, but there's a giant virus going around.
I'm going to be incredibly political here and not answer because there's loss of lives. So I'm just going to shut my mouth and just say that meme does exist, doesn't it? That is a meme. That's where I'm going to leave it at. How about we call 2020 the really bipolar year?
There you go.
That?
All right. That's a good one.
Let's head into the final segment of today's episode. It is the Broquette Block.
This is what happened with Daniel and I this week.
So I told that story last week about that Superman Red Sun statue sold.
It was sold. That's so sad.
Everything you heard last week was my genuine reaction and thoughts to that amazing, incredible statue being sold.
Gone.
In we come to my birthday celebration with my family.
Hours after we recorded.
Leo enjoys... Well, he didn't enjoy the cake because it wasn't typical frosting.
Like an adult cake.
Yeah, so it was a cannoli cake, which my sister made, and it was so good.
So good.
Leo, it wasn't frosting. It wasn't sugary enough for him, so he was like, oh, that's cake.
It was like ricotta cannoli filling.
So he went back to his Paw Patrol, whatever he was watching at the time, and opened up presents, and you come out, I don't know who came, you and Katie maybe, brought out the giant box.
Your family.
And I'm like, oh, I'm thinking it's like a cool play set that Leo and I can, play together with or something. And I open the thing up and it's the fucking Superman Red Sun statue, the last goddamn thing I was expecting. And I'm like, holy shit. And that's when you told me that everyone in the family from both sides pulled in and then my boss as well helped out and got me the Superman Red Sun statue, and I was absolutely fucking floored. Set it up that very night. It's up right here in our recording room, and I can thank you in the podcast here as well, and any other family members that might be listening, because God, it is my favorite statue in my collection, and not a surprise I was at all expecting. You who cannot hold any secrets, how did you fucking do it?
I just had to. I just dug deep into my soul.
You'd be a good Green Lantern.
I would. I had all the will. Or did I do it out of love? In which case I would have been a pink lantern, or
Right.
did I do it for the hope of seeing you so excited? In which case, I would be a blue lantern.
Right, that's true too.
I am all. What's all the lanterns? I am all the lanterns.
Right.
It was tough. It was very difficult because I knew how excited you would be, and I warred with myself because every time you mention the statue, you mentioned I'm going to buy it and leave it in the store. And so when we went about this whole purchasing plan, because I was the one who had to go, I was the ambassador. So I actually had to leave work early one day, so you thought I was still at work, and go to the store and pick it up and make sure I had enough time. And I knew that your boss was going to have to take it down and package it up. And then I was like, and then he's just going to take it back and put it back up. So do we just want to put a sold sign and play it off like, okay, he's, going to come back and get it? Whatever. So we packaged it up, and you were actually at your parents' when I brought it to your parents.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you were there. I met you guys. You and Leo were over there. So your mom had to come out and open the trunk, and we moved it from one car to the other while you were inside and had no idea. And it was this whole elaborate, even when I purchased it, it was put under a different name and all this stuff so that you would have no way of finding out. But it was so difficult for me because then that night after it sold, the next day, something like that, you found out it had sold, and you came up to me and you're like, it's sold. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. But the whole time I'm like, Kelli, if you hadn't bought it, what would you be saying to him right now? Like, what things would you be doing? So that's why I kept saying, like, how much is it online? Can we find one? Because those are things I would have said to you had I not already purchased it. But then you started looking too, and I was like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I'm like, I convince him not to get this if he finds, because you were even like, oh, it's only this price. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was still the MSRP price or the net pricing. And I was like, oh, this is one of the few Sideshow pieces that hasn't yet ballooned in fucking value.
Yeah, so then I started freaking out. And then you just kept talking about how sad you were that it was gone. And I was just like, oh, I know, honey. It's so sad that it's gone. It was there. You should have just bought it when you had the chance. And then I text your mom like, he's talking about it again. So we were all really excited. We, really wanted to pull that off for you because we knew it was something that meant so much to you and you really enjoyed it. And there were all these rumblings. You'd come home, oh, so-and-so is talking about buying it, or somebody tried to, or X, Y, and Z. And wanted to make sure that you had that piece for your collection.
Well, thank you very much for that birthday and Father's Day gift. That
both.
is
Yes,
huge.
Both.
Yeah.
Both for sure.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Of course. And how beautiful is it?
He's awesome.
Just great putting it all together and like knowing that he was there?
Yeah, it's like, all right, he's back where he should be, displayed somewhere in all his glory. It's amazing. It's a really cool. And I don't know who I joked with. I think it was my brother. But after it had sold, or before it had sold, where I had it displayed, there's that Simpsons episode where he's stuck in his job forever. And Mr. Burns put up that sign of, remember, you're here forever. And he put up pictures of Maggie and redid it so that it covered up pieces of the word. And it says, do it for her. And Roger, my brother, was saying, put up pieces of Superman Red Sun, pictures of him, do it for him.
Well, now you can, because here he is.
Let's wrap it up with your week, though. What's been going on your end?
Not a whole lot. Really busy week. Store did great. Again, I mean, we're just crushing things. I have my biannual review this week, and I anticipate it'll be a very good conversation. I think I mentioned that last week, too. So looking forward to that. On a personal note, I'm wrapping up the semester in school. I have a 100% in one class right now with one more assignment due, and I have a 96 in my other class. So I did really well this semester, but they were also classes where you literally had to be asleep through the whole thing to not do well. But they were extremely interesting. I took one class. It's all about understanding your audience and Google Analytics, and really how do you find out who your audience is, how they're interacting with your website or your brand, and what can you do to help promote that? Extremely interesting stuff. When I signed up for this major, I just did it because it was the thing that would get me my degree the fastest. It's so on point with things that I love to learn about. And, I'm reading about, okay, you have to post 15 Twitter posts a day, right, is most effective. And these are the times of day, and even understanding that. But I've also learned a lot of that through you and through things that you've discovered. So the professors are posting books, and they're like, read this book before you do this thing. And I was like, nah, I already know, I already know all this stuff. And then I can just go right in and roll in. I had to run a whole media campaign, which was really, really cool. I had to like put up posts and put where they would be and find social influencers and all this kind of stuff. And I came in 5th in my class, and I was just like bullshitting around with it. But those kind of things are just really fascinating. So it was cool to learn all that kind of stuff. I had a lot of fun this semester, even trying to balance when I got my work done versus, actually being at work and taking care of the family and all that.
I'm glad that the transition was easier for you in getting back into work because, as you mentioned, for the most part, from what I hear, the little I understand, everything was maintained as it was
when we went on
right
vacation.
When you left.
Yeah,
so I'm sure that helps.
It really did. My team actually did better than the week before while I was gone.
Maybe they don't need you.
They don't need me, and I struggle a lot with it because they don't need me. They don't need me to be there. But then I sit there and go, am I not doing enough? Like, am I not the one who's driving this change? But then I also have to step back and look at it and be like, okay, I'm the captain, I'm steering the boat, and I'm giving the direction down the line, even though I may not be there actually doing the work because I'm giving the direction. That's why they're getting things done. So I'm fighting with myself on that because I'm like, I'm not doing enough, but I'm doing a lot.
Yeah, I know it. In a similar way, it's kind of like on my end, I'm trying to delegate more work to my full-timer, and that's just something you have to do as a manager. It's very easy for me to just try to get everything done, as much done during my time there. But I have to learn to, any tasks that could be done by my full-timer instead, I should be delegating to them. Anything that doesn't have to be done right now, I should be delegating to them. So that's something that I've been working on more over the last couple of months, and especially this week as I get back into the swing of things. As I was catching up, it's like, okay, this is something that needs to get done, but I don't need to do it. So that's something that the owner has been helping me with maybe this is something you can have her do. And I'm like, oh, that's true. So maybe moving forward, this is now one of her tasks. So that's something that I've been working on. And I think I know it's going to help me out in the long run, especially because that time is then instead going to be focused on something else that will be something that I need to do instead, or can be done quicker, or, it's going to save time overall and also give everyone else something to do throughout the day.
Yeah, it's very difficult to give up that control. And I think that's one of the hardest pieces as a manager is saying, I know that I can do this to my standards.
Right.
Let me try to trust somebody else with that and understand it's not going to be to my standards. I need to give that continuous feedback. And then one day it will be, and then I don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
And when it's not to your standard, it's very easy for us to crumble on that. But we also have to remember that the world doesn't end because it's not up to that particular standard.
Oh, it doesn't? Because I feel like it does.
I know it does. I know, absolutely. To us it does, but we got to say, all right, but we don't have to freak out about the world ending.
You said the wrong words over the headset. I would have said it differently this way.
Yeah.
Let me just do it. Let me just do it.
I'm right there with you when they're ringing someone up, especially.
Yes.
It's like, but I know if I jump in and try to correct, then I'm now micromanaging, and that's also a negative. So it's a balancing act.
It is. I'm so many triggers right now. So I got to go to work. I'm sorry, guys.
Let's give a quick Leo update as well. I was talking to Bobby about the bath time thing where he doesn't want a shower or bath time, and he's like, why don't you try bribing him with bubbles? And I'm like, well, we've tried that already.
With colors, yeah.
Yeah, and colors as well. So he's like, well, bribery it is. And it is. But now ice cream and chocolate don't really work because he doesn't care. Like it's like, how about we give you a chocolate after your bath? And he just ignores it and still doesn't want the bath. Yeah. He wants the chocolate now.
So here's the hilarious thing is he screams every time it's like time to take a shower, right? Absolutely hates it. And then he gets in there and he's fine and he's having fun. And then he doesn't want to get out. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Quit being a baby.
He did. Oh, I do have an update though. So we have started getting back into the flow of baby gym now that it's open and there's not as many kids. But he did so well this week. He was just very engaged in all the activities. He wanted to run the obstacle course. He wanted to swing on the swings. He wanted to do all the other things. And so I don't know if he's just like, I feel like he's developed a lot in the last 2 weeks, even listening, understanding directions, following directions. In the parking lot, he held my hand without complaint today, which is the first time he's ever done that. It's usually screaming and crying and he's his own baby, but he was like, nope, okay, we're in the parking lot, I hold your hand, trying to say more words. He started doing a bunch of animal noises.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
He was just, we were laying in bed and he was going, ooh, ooh, ah, ah, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a monkey. And like, just really making a lot of strides that we haven't seen before. But yeah, he did so well in baby gym, and he still didn't really want to interact with the kids, but one of them went up and said, oh, I want your ball, and like he gave him the ball, and usually he fights and he's like, no, it's mine, but that was that. And it's just so great to watch him do those things and to grow and to be, he started play fighting because he's watching Ninja Turtles, so he wants to wrestle and do, I don't know, nunchuck moves, whatever it is he's doing. And it just makes me so proud as a mom. But then at the same time, I'm like, oh no, where's the time going?
Yeah.
Because you were just a baby and now you're a kid. You're not a baby anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know certain BroCat Core members do enjoy the Leo update. So there it is for this week. And I think that wraps it up for this lengthier show too. Lots of news, lots of comic book reviews.
Lots to talk about, like Pokemon Snap. Oh my God.
As always, BroCat Core, don't forget you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, LinkedIn. All of those are at thereasonsimbroke.com.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Pokemon photographer Palpa Kelli.
And I am Pokemon Ranger Daniel.
And BroCat Core, all will be well.
What Pokemon from the first
Pikachu.
Pokemon Snap that they did not have in the first game do you want to see in this sequel, remake, whatever they're calling it?
It's a sequel. It's going to be a sequel.
Scott from LGG was saying that it's more of a remake than it is a sequel.
Who's the Palpa?
All right, it's a sequel.
Thank you. There's so many good Pokemon. And I feel like they included so many. Like, really, who did they not have?
Bulbasaur.
I thought you said Bulbasaur was in the first one.
No, well, yeah, he wasn't in this new one, though. But I thought you were saying that in this new one, they had all these Pokemon.
I thought your question was, which Pokemon did they not have in the first one? Do I want to see in the new one?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, but see, my thought is you're going to say, oh, maybe Chandelure or some of the new ones, but you're only focused on the 151.
Yeah,
they had
Gen
Lapras
1er.
In there.
Yeah.
They didn't have Gengar, though. They had like that pattern thing in the stars.
Oh, yeah, you did see that
one. You didn't
one,
actually get Gengar.
You saw Haunter, though, didn't you?
Yeah.
You saw Haunter. They didn't have Gengar. I guess they could put him in there. I feel like they already had so many, though, because you got my favorites. You have Magikarp. You have all the Dragonites.
Mm-hmm.
You have Gyarados. He was chilling.
Raichu, Pikachu, Charmander, Squirtle,
Was Raichu
Bulbasaur.
in there? Raichu wasn't in there.
I feel like he was.
Raichu was not in there.
Okay.
Definitely
I thought
not.
it was in the electric plant, but...
You had Ninetales, too, didn't you? No.
Yes, I thought you did. Or I could be thinking of Pokemon Stadium.
I think you're
Maybe you
thinking
didn't
of
have
Pokemon
Vulpix even.
The Vulpix was in there. But you didn't have Ninetales. So I would like to see Ninetales. He's pretty cool.
Mewtwo was there in the stars, I think.
Yes, but you didn't. With his big belly. He was there. He was
right.
Like, oh. You still had Bellsprout.
Mm.
Did you have Bellsprout? No. You had Weeping Bell, who turned into Victory Bell. But you didn't have Bellsprout. I'd like to see Bellsprout.
All right. That's not the answer I expected.
Who did you think I would say?
Anyone but that.
Well, maybe like Seal and Dugong. They were pretty cool. I feel like they had all of my favorite ones, though, and you got to find them in cool ways. Like Scyther, you had to like throw that pester ball, and he come out, he was like, Scyther! And he like flew away. He was pretty cool.
We didn't get Missing No in the original. How about we got a Missing No in there?
Because it would have crashed my game.
And wouldn't that be the greatest? It just erases your fucking game, and you got to buy a new one, and you would happily do it.
I would, but I'd still be sad, too.